Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth, and fancy seeing you here in June. I'm very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Hello, and welcome back to Big Mouth, and you can keep this or any other conversation I ignite going on over on my Twitter, at Movies TV Mad, my Vero, at Big Mouth 1, and the extension to this channel, kind of, don't blame me if you don't like some of the content, is my Instagram, Big Mouth 11289. Welcome to Tuesday's edition of the dceu Daily. And anyone who tells me David Ayer doesn't want his cut of the Suicide Squad movie released is just gonna, I tell you, I'm just gonna go talk to the hand. David Ayer has been brilliant. Now, the past few months, and I'm not sure if David always had a Twitter account, but he's been very, very prominent on my Instagram feed and my Twitter feed. So he posted something from the Suicide Squad, and I'm going to repeat his words. This is a mock-up parademon head that was 3D printed. I shot this image with my Nikon. Wow. So look at that. Look at that beauty. Look at that beauty. But David didn't leave it at that. What else does he have to say? Where am I? Yes, and someone asks him a question, right? And he says, so the parademons were re-assimilated people, which would have been consistent with Zack Snyder's JL, where I guess the anti-life equation has something to do with changing their will. And David does reply briefly and says, yes, it was just like in the comics. So basically, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Suicide Squad were all precursors to Zack Snyder's Justice League movie. But that's not what happened. Why? Because Man of Steel and Batman v Superman were divisive to Warner Brothers' bottom line. Now, ultimately, I can understand that. They're a business. They want to be popular. They want to make money. So what happened was, everything changed. We saw what happened with BVS. The theatrical cut. I mean, I tried watching the theatrical cut, and it is an absolute mess. Because I always normally watch the 3-hour Ultimate Edition, which is a work of art, which is brilliant. But do me a favour, guys and girls, and you in between. Go and watch, right? If you've got the time, which will be about 5.5 hours, right? So you probably haven't. But watch the Ultimate cut, then watch the theatrical cut. The theatrical cut is literally, especially when I've seen the Ultimate cut so many times, the theatrical cut is a mess. The critics were right in terms of it aesthetically, the way it was cut. That's because they took Zack Snyder's film and cut it to pieces and turned it into a 2.5 hour to an hour, 25-minute movie, but they cut it to pieces. It's a studio cut. It's not a theatrical cut, it's a studio cut. And they did the same to David Ayer's stuff. They cut to pieces his Joker. You know when Jared Leto was going, I'm so proud of this movie. I'm so proud of this cast. Remember all that, right? Forget all the nonsense that people said they didn't like his pranks. That was nonsense, right? He's a method actor. He's a bit wacky. People are used to this. They weren't issues, right? That's nonsense, right? They cut David Ayer's Suicide Squad to pieces like they did with the BVS theatrical cut, right? Unrecognisable movies. And it's worse, really, because you do have the theatrical cut of BVS and you do have the theatrical cut of... No, sorry, you don't have a theatrical cut and an Ultimate Edition. What you've got with Suicide Squad, you've actually got a theatrical cut and a little bit of an extended edition. Did they call it the director's cut? Now, don't get me wrong. The extended edition they gave us of Suicide Squad is pretty good, and I do like watching it. I didn't like the fact that with the Suicide Squad, double feature, which is the theatrical cut and the director's cut. The director's cut isn't in 4K, right? They didn't even want to invest in that, but the theatrical cut is. Now, with the BVS theatrical cut, that's in 4K, but so is the Ultimate Edition. That's because they were desperate to put some money on top of what they thought they should have made. So already you're seeing a cycle here. a cycle of a creative who does what he wants to do, and then Warner Brothers, Kevin Sugihara, not Jeff Johns, Kevin Sugihara, comes in and says, nah, right, Man of Steel was divisive. Batman v Superman, well, we've tested it with a few critics. They weren't too pleased. We're going to cut your film to pieces, right? Why did you even continue with Zack Snyder after Man of Steel if you didn't trust him? Oh, I know. Christopher Nolan threatened never to work for your studio again. That's why, isn't it? Mess, mess, mess. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So they messed with Batman v Superman, but then they allowed Zack's version to come out. And that is Zack's ultimate vision of BVS. He admits that at least. And then we've got the Suicide Squad situation. I want to see David Ayer's cut. I know for a fact that David Ayer wants to release his cut. Now, he's not like Zack. I don't expect him to get a Vero. Maybe he's got a Vero, but I don't expect him to go ferociously and aggressively at it to try and get his cut released like Zack has. Zack, his vision of Justice League is everything to him. That's all he cares about, really. Yes, he'll make other movies. He'll do the zombie thing he's doing for Netflix, and it'll be awesome. But ultimately, it's all a means to an end for Zack Snyder. It's all about getting his 3.5 hour, 4 hour cut, or 3 hour movie, whatever's going to be cut down to in the end, released. So we can see it and enjoy it. And finally, he gets justice. That's what it's all about. And I just want to reiterate something, because I have got a little bit of hate for my kind of stance on Zachary Levi's comments. I went back and saw what he said on stage. It wasn't good. I admit it. It wasn't good. I don't agree with what Zachary Levi said, but I will fight for his right to say it. That's life. We are now on these reactive platforms, and people can say whatever the fuck they want. That's the way it is. I'm sorry, I could tell you every human being has only 4 fingers and no thumbs, and you could say, Mick, you're talking absolute bollocks, mate. But I have a right to say it. It is bollocks, it's crap, I'm talking nonsense, but I do have a right to say it. And so does Zachary Levi. Now, he was mocking us in a way. He was making a joke out of it. Did he say those things because the studio put him up to it? We'll never know. Probably, yeah. I don't even know. I like Zachary Levi as a whole. I think he's done great things to help mental health sufferers. He's a great actor. He was great in Chuck. And he's a really great Shazam. So I don't want to give someone a thumbs down because of one stupid thing. It was ill-conceived to go up there and say those things. He made a joke of the Snyder Cut. He made a joke of the Snyder community. I don't like that. But he has a right to say it, and he has every right not to get attacked because he did one stupid thing. He knows he did a stupid thing. Maybe he doesn't respect us. That's up to him. He doesn't have to. But ultimately, he doesn't damage us. He doesn't embarrass us. He embarrasses himself. You know what does embarrass our movement? People out there, you people out there, rogue elements who start bullying and attacking people who don't agree with us. And that's the end of that. So basically, right, we're fighting for Zack Snyder's vision of Justice League and David Ayer's cut of the Suicide Squad. Will we ever see them? One day, I believe we will. I don't know when. Could be this year, could be in 200 years. We could actually be dead when these bloody films are released. I'll tell you what, my ghost is coming back to watch those movies. So basically, we can go back to now, and then we know what happened with Justice League. Again, they literally made the same mistake with BVS, Suicide Squad, and then they did it with Justice League, but they got even more dramatic. They literally full sacked off the project, whether they made his life hell and he said, fuck you, I'm quitting, or basically they sacked him or whatever. They got rid of him, they got Joss Whedon in to do some kind of corn-fed kind of condensed film. And they would have got away with it if it wasn't for those meddling kids. Joking. They would have got away with it, really, if it wasn't for the CGI stuff. The CGI on Henry's upper lip, I think that really, for me, is ugly. It's the CGI on Henry. And not just in the opening scene, the horrible smile. Do you bleed? These were horrible things that no professional studio should never, ever release a film in that condition. It was disgusting. It was embarrassing. And it should never have happened. Absolutely no way, should never have happened. So that's interesting now, and that leads me into what I want to talk about next. So, including Man of Steel, we now have 9 DC films since Man of Steel, right? Including Man of Steel. That's including the upcoming Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. And you know how much I love saying that title. It's a mouthful, but it's really fun to say. I kind of get a buzz that I remember the bloody title in the first place. So 9 movies, including Joker movie as well, by the way. And it's very interesting because Justice League would have killed any other franchise. And it's amazing. You know, Aquaman, Shazam, Joker. And now it's going to be very interesting this year what happens with Birds of Prey, I'm saying the whole title again, and Wonder Woman 1984. I think these 2 films are very interesting. In terms of what they are, I kind of know what one of them is. Actually, I know what both of them are now, right? And I'm pretty excited for every fan who's excited for these films. Some fans will want these films to fail. That's life. They think Zack Snyder they will wake up one day and Zack Snyder will be running the whole thing again. Wrong. That's not what's going to happen. Justice League would have killed any other franchise. But it is interesting with these 2 films this year because Scott Mendelson had an interesting post. Now, Mendelson is very political, but sometimes he does actually talk about films, which is interesting. And he did this kind of what's going on in the world kind of thing with a crying emoji. You know, this is happening. And DC is doing better than Star Wars. And he's got this crying emoji, right? True. So I think we should compare Lucasfilm and Warner Brothers. We should compare the Disney Star Wars sequel trilogy and the standalone movies with what's going on and what went on over at DC and Warner Brothers. So how is it that Star Wars, slowly, their films are making less and less money in terms of The Force Awakens, which was a big hit. The Last Jedi made just over $1 billion, but it was a solid box office, but I think Disney expected more. Then obviously Solo was an absolute flop, a disaster. Who knows what the reasons for that? I think it was The Last Jedi, and I also think nobody asked for a solo bloody movie without Harrison Ford. And then, of course, you've got The Rise of Skywalker, or what a lot of people are calling The Fall of Skywalker. Now, I did a very positive reaction video to that film, and I know you're talking about Star Wars, but why? It's all to do with the DCEU. What's interesting is, as a company, as a business, Lucasfilm and Disney just haven't learned their lesson. But Warner Brothers quickly knew that these were the things they were going to do to try and make a successful franchise. Stop trying to copy Marvel. Stop trying to copy Disney. That's what their attempt was with Justice League. It failed. They could have made a kind of Marvelized MCU-type Justice League movie. It could have worked. I'm not saying it couldn't have worked, but the way they did it by sacking Zack and quickly trying to do things on the same schedule, it was a joke. It was ridiculous. That's why it really failed. So Warner Brothers went to New Line Cinema, said, we like Walter Hamada. We believe he makes films on low budgets. He can bring in the right people. We believe New Line Cinema has got great producers, writers and directors. We think we can salvage this franchise if we do self-contained movies that are part of the same DCEU franchise, but standalone Black Label movies as well, and on a budget and make a profit and even get some critical acclaim. Now, so it's very interesting. Now, Snyder fans may not want to hear this, but Walter Hamada has turned the perception of DC movies around. Whether we like it or not, there are many people who don't like BVS and MOS and even Suicide Squad. That is a fact. We can't do nothing about it. I love those movies, but the mainstream mostly didn't. But it is interesting because Man of Steel and BVS are very divisive movies that made quite a lot of money. Not a massive amount of money, but quite a lot of money. They were on a plus. They weren't flop movies, nor was Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad actually did extremely well. Extremely well, really well. And Wonder Woman did really well as well. But Wonder Woman wasn't actually a divisive movie. And no, it wasn't because it starred a woman. It's because it was a bloody good movie. Right? And so, how is it that Warner Brothers quickly said, right, this... Now, I'm not talking about me personally. I'm talking about how Warner Brothers looked at this. after Zack left Justice League, they said, right, now it's time to make decisions. I think they were planning on booting him out way before that. They were. And I think Walter Hamada was put in place probably after Suicide Squad. I remember a WB executive telling me, he said, listen, we can't carry on like this. We literally can't carry on like this. Every film we release has a negative reaction, an aggressive reaction, and it's not doing what we want them to do. We want people to love these films, ultimately. And yes, we do want the mainstream to love these films, but we also want everyone else to love these films. So they made decisions and things changed very, very quickly. When Hamada came in, as I've spoken about before, he came in and took a look at what James Wan was doing with Aquaman. Now, James Wan and Walter Hamada have worked many times before over at New Line Cinema, so it wasn't like this new boss was going to mess with what James Wan wanted to do. But James Wan was working with Zack Snyder's vision. He was. There were things that were going to be in that movie that we didn't see. I think we were going to see Batman. We may have even seen Superman. There are rumours. That never happened because Walter Hamada came in and said, look, James, do what you want to do, but you're not having Batman. You're not having Superman. All you're getting is a name drop of Steppenwolf. That's it, like it or not. So James Wan, I suppose, was kind of happy because he was allowed to do what he wanted to do with the movie. And it was a very successful movie. I really like Aquaman. It's a great movie. So then we look at Star Wars, where Warner Brothers said, right, we are going to make a decision. We are not going to carry on like this. It's not, whatever you think, as a Snyder fan, you love BVS, MOS, and you wanted Zack to remain. But Warner Brothers were looking at this from a business standpoint. And they said, we can't carry on like this. Walter Hamada comes in and he changes everything. And not dramatically. That's what's really interesting about his success. He came in very cleverly. Aquaman came after Justice League. Aquaman coming after a flop movie had a lot of pressure under it and really should have flopped itself. How it made $1 billion, I'll never know. But it was $1 billion movie. It did work, and that's an achievement coming from a film like Justice League. Amazing. Then Shazam made nowhere near as much as that, but the mainstream audience and critics adore that movie. Exactly what Warner Brothers wanted. Now, it seems to me when you look at Lucasfilm and Star Wars, now, since The Mandalorian, they're starting to learn that they can't do without the hardcore Star Wars fans. Now, before, when Kathleen Kennedy first took over, yes, I'm going to promote my politics and my agenda. Fuck the fans, it doesn't matter. We'll get young girls and young boys to watch it. We don't need them. A few years later, she realises, and Iger realised, they absolutely need us. So they're trying to win us back again. And that's what's going to happen now. There'll still be their political agendas and their ideologies, but Star Wars will be a lot better for it. The future of Star Wars is bright. But is it too little, too late? Who knows? Who knows? And that's an entirely different video, how Iger betrayed Lucas, didn't trust his instincts to say, do you know what? I don't care if you don't like the prequels, people. George Lucas is the daddy of Star Wars, and we must work with him, at least as a consultant. So that's where it went wrong there. But where Warner Brothers absolutely got it right and spot on, as far as I'm concerned, is to say, and I think they do say this, and people from Warner Brothers have said it to me. They've said, listen, we think Man of Steel and Batman v Superman are great films, but unfortunately, the people that we need to come in and enjoy these films don't. And that's the crux of the matter. Now, they were absolutely wrong for messing with BVS, Suicide Squad and Justice League. They were. But at least after that mess, they learnt their lesson, brought in directors, let their vision come through. Joker is a great example of that's what Warner Brothers are doing now. So I just want to finish off really and talk a little bit about Geoff Johns because, of course, Geoff Johns is still hated and is cited as one of the biggest betrayers of Zack Snyder. And a lot of people, I see their videos and say, well, Geoff Johns isn't part of DC anymore. He's not doing DC live action. Go and watch the beginning of every episode of a DC TV show and see whose name you'll see on it. Geoff Johns. I watched Batwoman for the first time yesterday, a bit of an experience. His name's on that as well. Guess who co-wrote Wonder Woman 1984? Geoff Johns. So he may not be running the franchise, but he's certainly a big player still. And what he's done, what Warner Bros. Have done, is taking him out of where his strengths weren't, which is leading something and writing things and developing things. And that's where Geoff Johns' strengths are. And as I said before, putting him and Zack Snyder together was wrong because Geoff's ideology is different in terms of comics and superheroes to what Zack's is. So it was never going to work. Ultimately, you can call him a traitor or a betrayer. I just say he had his point of view and Zack had his. And ultimately, Geoff Johns was always going to win because Geoff Johns is Mr. DC and Zack Snyder is a director, a means to an end. There's plenty of directors out there. Zack makes amazing films that nobody else can. Nobody can make films like Zack Snyder can. And I'll always support Zack Snyder. But as I've said before, predominantly, I'm a DC fan, and I just think Warner Brothers are making the right decisions. Now, what remains to be seen, because next month, in fact, before next month, we are going to have reactions for Birds of Prey. And I'm very interested to see what the critics and the bloggers are saying about this movie. Because it's interesting now, and this is something else that Walter Hamada has achieved. DC movies are beginning to become the darling of the bloggers and the pundits. Not all of them, but don't forget Collider are pretty much out of the business now. I mean, their hate towards the DCEU, look at where they are now. Bye-bye. The point is, Walter Hamada has turned things around, but what does this mean for the Snyder Cut? Has the Snyder Cut, has the Ayer Cut got a true chance of ever being released? That's up to you, and that's up to me. We keep on fighting for those visions. We watch those visions, and we enjoy the future of the DC cinematic universe, or whatever you want to call it, DCEU, the worlds of DC. Because I'm just going to finish off on one thing and say, I've been watching DC live action since I was a small boy. My first experience was Superman the movie, the 1960s TV series, which was always repeated. I love those experiences. Even the DC films and TV shows where people say, well, that's crap. They always leave me with an impression. There's the great ones, there's the not so great ones, but let's not forget DC and Superman the movie that is the first great live action superhero movie. And no one can ever take that away from us. And I know some Man of Steel Snyder fans try and hit Superman the movie over the head with Man of Steel. I think that's dumb. I love both movies. I think they're both very different visions, but they're both great movies. And you can't compare Man of Steel with Superman the movie. When Superman the movie was being made, that took nearly 3 years to make that movie, right? It took nearly 3 years because there was no computer-generated images. They nearly had to do everything in the camera. So Superman the movie is one of the greatest achievements in filmmaking history. And to put it down because you prefer Man of Steel, I love Man of Steel, but I love Superman the movie too. There has to be a coming together instead of a coming apart. Please let me know what you thought of the video. Please comment down below. Please like, share and subscribe. Please share the channel as well. And I'll be back tomorrow with even more DCEU Daily. I hope you enjoyed this random chat. There really isn't a lot of news. See you again tomorrow.